Welcome to No Compromises, a peek into the mind of two old web devs who have seen some things. This is Joel.
And this is Aaron.
I always beat the drum, like in tips and different things, about making sure your local development matches production. This is something I feel strongly about it because I feel like I've bumped into maybe dozens of ways that it has bit me when they're not the same. And I'm talking like even like the patch version of PHP being different, file system case sensitivity, you name it, I've been there. So, Aaron, I know you feel the same way.
I would say that before we kind of locked down having everything be the same in all the different environments,
Yeah.
I would say before we made that decision, I remember running into scenarios like you just mentioned at least one time a year, if not
Right.
longer. And
Yeah.
so that adds up over the course of old cranky man career.
Absolutely. Yes. So it's not like this isn't like, oh, like theoretically you should do this. It's like, no, I've literally been burned in bad ways in production and I just can't take it anywhere. So all this is to say, today's topic, we had another area where I see regularly people deviating how they handle local versus production. And I just wanted to see if it kind of falls into that same bucket for you. I'm going to let you kick it off because I think this topic was your idea, but I was just sort of setting up some background for us here.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So I was looking at the service provider for something. I'm going to pick one of the tooling in Laravel. Let's say Telescope. And in there's a gate functionality set up, and they might change it as we go through different versions. So I'm not going to refer to the specific method names, but there's sort of like a gate functionality in there, and it was
Yeah.
kind of set up that says like return true if you want someone to access this based off their user account, return false if you don't, and by default it's kind of built that it checks the user's email against an empty array, which is always going to be false. Okay, I don't like that because to me, that tells me that no one should be able to access Telescope, right?
Hmm.
I mean, if the gate says who can access Telescope, and then it's configured that no one can, how come locally when I go to /telescope, I can see it?
Oh, okay. All
And
right.
the reason is based off of their code further up in the process. There's a service provider that basically checks that says, I'm going to allow you access to this if you're not local, or if you are local, or this gate matches. And that drives me nuts because I'm like, first of all, I don't like that it's different in local versus production. But
Yeah.
second of all, here's the worst part. I don't know how I can actually test my logic that is actually working that protects my production access. So it's literally set up in a way that I can't. I guess maybe I can force it to the testing environment and write a test there. Would have to
Hmm.
look, but I don't know if it's whatever. But I should be able to function now. I should be able to be restricted from access locally, the same as I would be in production. And it wasn't clear. You have to look at the documentation. It's not even like in the comments of that. So
Yeah.
I don't understand the rationale or reasoning for that. That's kind of beyond my point. But it is an example of something that is not the same locally as it is in production.
Right, right. Yeah. And this is a good one. And it's not just Telescope, like you mentioned Telescope, but I think Horizon, like a lot of first party Laravel, I don't know how to phrase it, but like I think maybe Pulse is another one. Like they're sort of meant to be used in a certain way, like bolted on to like it's not application functionality. I don't know if I'm, but it's like there's this category of
Yeah.
packages that follow the same pattern. And you're right. If you just look at the app service provider, because I brought it up while you were talking, the only hint that there's this special local only behavior is I think the comment on the doc block says in non-local environments. So you have to like read between the lines a little bit and be
Mm,
like, oh, so like it's different in local. Okay, but what does local mean? And it actually means specifically like app underscore env equals the word local. Like it's very specific to that. And I don't know about test either, but I think you're right. It might treat that production ish. But so yeah, that's kind of a separate concern, like how it's sort of hidden's too strong a word, but it's non-obvious behavior. But it is a pretty radical departure between local and production. Um, and like you talked about the gate logic. I suppose I'm just trying to think what the counter argument would be here. Like, if your gate logic truly was this one person's email address is whitelisted, you could maybe say, well, that's like what could go wrong there. But in a real app, it's probably more sophisticated, maybe
Yeah,
checking
it's
a role.
probably roles or IP or a combination of those two
Yes.
things. And
Right.
and whenever there's any sort of logical combinations of stuff, I want to test it. Like I said, I just happened to think while I was talking that maybe that doesn't you could write a test, like a unit test against that.
Yeah.
But again, I don't like that I would have a unit test that proves something works in a way that I can't actually
Right.
exercise locally. That doesn't make
Yeah.
any sense to me. I've seen them the other direction where it's like I can use something locally and I can write tests, but I maybe can't hit the production version of that. So I actually don't ever know if it works. But
Right.
I've not seen the reverse. It's confusing to me.
Yeah. Yes. And I agree with you. Like I want to be able to drive the app and kind of experience it the way a real user is going to experience it. Um, so just trying to anticipate what people might be thinking. There's first of all, the reason this is probably the default is it does reduce developer friction, right? So when I'm running this locally and I'm logging in maybe with like a test account or some seeded account, like I don't have to keep going to my service provider and adding the email address and doing all the setup stuff. So that I understand that approach, but to me, all of the developer ease in the world immediately is invalidated the first time a bug hits production, especially a security related bug. And so I just tend to really, it's not that I don't like developer ease, but to me, it's such a lower priority than ensuring my system works correctly in a security context. Do you agree with my framing of that?
Yeah, I even bought into that even further. Like I understood it and liked it when I first saw Telescope when it was more of like a manually registered thing.
Yeah.
But now it automatically registers unless you say don't discover, I believe. And so to me that really was sort of I don't know, it's just hard to like I could install something and then so I saw that yeah, I could access it right away,
Yeah.
which is nice, but it was weird that I could access it right away before it was automatically available to me.
Yes.
So I think that that's like the disconnection. If it was always automatically available to me, it would have made more sense to me that I could always access it immediately when I installed it. But it was like that was a separation that time in Laravel, I think. But you brought it up. You said like this is a thing that maybe we don't really like. Do you remember what I did to try to get around that? Did you like what I did?
I vaguely remember what you did, but remind me.
Well, basically, when I saw this the first couple of times, I was okay with it, but I
Mm.
kept it just kept bothering me, and I said, yeah, I just don't like this. I want to see what it's like. And I wasn't using an email address; I was using roles and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
I wanted to test that. And so what I ended up having to do is go up inside of the actual service provider provided by Laravel's package, see how they were calling my gate functionality.
Okay.
And sadly, I had to go and copy that function that was calling that into mine and change
Oh.
it. So it was like it would do three or four different things
Hmm.
as well as calling that gate. And I didn't like that, but it was the only way I could come up with is like I had to say, um, I'll copy this exact same method into there and then just remove the one check for is local. And then everything worked as I expected it.
Yes. Yeah. And I think they and it's that's jogging a memory for me. And I think in later versions of either Horizon or Laravel, they did even narrow that down. So it's like one
Mhm.
function called gate or something now that you just have to override that and get rid of what it that extra check it was doing for local. We basically don't make that call. So
It was that, and there was also something where I probably should stop talking because I may not even remember the details. But I thought there was something else in maybe Telescope or something where it was like it would make decisions on blacklisting or whitelisting or including
oh
something based off the environment as well. And I was like, I
yes.
don't want that based off the environment. I want it always to function the same way, and I will configure things as I want them. And you know what? I will see locally what the problems is before it goes to production.
Right?
Because if I'm logging my passwords or something like that, I want to see that locally, and I'll stop that there.
Yeah, I agree, and you're right. It's these blend together because they're all slightly different, but also mostly the same. So, anyways, that's fair. Yeah, anybody listening to this and wanting to take action, when you look at the actual code, it'll be apparent where the point is to override this. And I would just say maybe to wrap up, like if you're listening to this and you think like this is old man says get off my lawn or whatever. You know what? You can believe that. You'll run into these issues, or maybe you would just lead a charmed life and never once run into one of the things that I've run into over and over and over. But trust me, this Aaron and I are both saying this comes from like hard earned experience, and maybe listen to us.
Joel was just complaining about his AirPods, something about putting one in and then the second one in, and I don't know. Sometimes they work. So I wasn't really paying attention, but
Okay, thank you.
And he said, "Do you ever have that happen to you?" And I wasn't paying attention because no, I don't use my AirPods like you do.
You put them in your nose, or what do you do?
No, I only use one at a time. So
Okay.
because I use them when I'm outside walking, I want to see what's going on, or I want to hear what's going on in the world. And we had this little weird conversation, like, back and forth, like, well, I don't need to. And I was like, I wasn't mad, but I was like, and I wasn't judging Joel.
Okay.
But I was like, maybe a little bit. Because it was about, like, for me, it was about safety. If I can hear people want to, without both ear pods and whatnot. I don't know. I didn't judge Joel a little bit there. But then I told him, I gotta apologize to you for something else, because I've been judging Joel a lot lately, and I don't know why.
Oh boy.
And I'm going to tell you the other thing I need to apologize for.
I don't like this.
And I think it's because I was jealous, and it was actually a really great idea, and I didn't like that I didn't think of it.
Oh.
So the other day we went out to have lunch, and we both ordered food, and I think Joel's food was way better than mine. And the reason I think it was way better is it was just amazing little bites of food of all different types of stuff. And I ordered one entree, and Joel had ordered 2 appetizers. And I remember thinking, like, Joel, what's wrong with you? Why are you ordering 2 appetizers? And he's like, oh, I just what I want. I'm like, but is that going to be enough food? And I just had all this, like, all these different judgmental questions. And it didn't feel judgmental, but it felt like trying to, like, tell him that my way is better. You have 1 appetizer, maybe, and then have the main meal. And then he's sitting over here having his appetizer. 2 appetizers. Well,
That's
I was
right.
a little upset. I was a little upset because they came out before my meal, and so he got his whole meal, whatever.
Another hack.
But if we look back at the whole meal, I had some leftover in my meal. I wasn't really happy with it. Joel just demolished his, was so happy the entire time,
Yep.
and made me jealous. So, all in all, you won, and I apologize, Joel. I was wrong. You don't have to just take our word for it. There's other people that can tell you how they've been bit in production too. And where would you find those people, Joel?
Well, I'll tell you what, Aaron. There's some nice smart devs in the Mastering Laravel community. And if you'd like to join, head over to masteringlaravel.io and click on community. We'd love to have you.